I was introduced to this book a couple years ago, and I found it to be one of the most insightful books that I've read regarding the soft side or the psychological side of money. And this is especially useful for those of us from immigrant families that perhaps have thoughts about money that really don't serve us. This book doesn't contain investment strategies or which property to buy. Instead, the author Morgan Housel talks about the thinking process of wealth, which is super important and it's just not talked about enough. So in this video, I'm going to share with you just 5 lessons that I pulled out of this book that really impacted me, and hopefully you'll be inspired to read it on your own. Hi, I'm Dan, and I'm on a mission to help immigrant professionals grow their wealth passively through real estate. If you want a copy of my passive real estate investing guide, just click down below in the description. Early in the book, Morgan talks about that doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are, and has a lot to do with how you behave. And that behavior is just hard to teach, even to smart people. I love this quote that Morgan talks about that's attributed to Napoleon, where he talks about defining what a military genius is. And Napoleon said, "Why, that's the man that can do the average thing when all the people around him are going crazy." It's kind of the same with investing. The person that can stick to fundamentals and not get distracted by the ups and downs of the market and where everybody else is going nuts will probably do well over the long term. This really resonated with me because I think we all know very intelligent people who may have a genius IQ but not have much money or have made bad decisions with money. And we also probably know people that aren't the smartest or the most intellectual, but they've done very well for themselves financially. I know people in both of these camps, so this really connected with me. So let's dive into these 5 lessons that Morgan talks about. The first lesson is your frame of reference on money depends on your background. Now, we all come from different backgrounds, different families, different ways we were raised. We were born in different times. We experienced different job markets. And because of all this, we've learned different lessons about money. And those lessons really color the way we look at the world. Your personal experience makes up 0.00001% of the reality of what happened in the world. But it makes up, say, 80 or 90% of the thoughts you have of how the world works, which is kind of scary to think about. The challenge for us is that no amount of study or open-mindedness, mindfulness can genuinely recreate the power of fear and uncertainty. You can read about what it's like to lose everything in the Great Depression, but unless you actually have those emotional scars from that time, you're not really going to know what it's like. And that really impacts how people invest and behaviors that they follow with their money. My family came from Cuba in 1960, fled the country from Fidel Castro, and they arrived with very little. And it's a traumatic experience to have to flee your own country, leave everything behind, and come to a new place. And that experience is so different than the experience I had when I was born after they got here, where I didn't have to go through that. I had food on the table. It's just a very different experience. So wouldn't it make sense that their views about money would be different than mine? This just reminds me that it's so important to continually learn, study, and keep an open mind. You know, I may not know what it's like to live through the Depression or through some other big event, but I can at least try to learn from it. And while it's not perfect, making the attempt and having an open mind, I think, certainly helps. Second lesson is to look at success and failure a little differently than you do today. Morgan makes a point in the book that I completely agree with, is that there's a very slim difference often between success and failure. Business magazines like Forbes, etc., they don't celebrate on their covers, investors that potentially made good decisions but happened to be on the wrong side of risk and potentially lost out. Instead, they celebrate rich investors who may have made average decisions or even reckless decisions, but because they got lucky, they hit it big and they're celebrated. Success and failure in that regard is it's almost 2 sides of the same coin. So they're very, very close to each other. And it's something that I do think about. They mentioned in the book a quote from Bill Gates: "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." When things are going well, it's good to realize that there's probably other factors benefiting us that we don't see, things like luck or chance or whatever you might call it. I believe this in my own life. I've accomplished some great things in my life, but not for a second would I believe that luck didn't play a part in a lot of those successes. It's just a fact of life. The opposite is also true. Failure can be a lousy teacher as well, because it seduces smart people into thinking that they've made terrible decisions, when in fact, it just reflects the reality of the risks that they were getting into. The key is to make sure that a bad investment here or there won't wipe you out, which allows you to continue to play the game until the odds are more in your favor. The third lesson is knowing what is enough. Another point that really made me think a lot about my own goals is just knowing when enough is enough. Morgan talks about Bernie Madoff. You probably know him as the guy that ran that famous Ponzi scheme in Wall Street that ruined the lives of many people. I didn't realize that Bernie Madoff, before he did this whole Ponzi scheme, was actually making $25 to $50 million a year. By almost anybody's standards, he was considered a very wealthy man. So why would you risk all of that to pursue even more money? It's because maybe he didn't have the sense of what's enough. How much money is enough? One of the toughest things for investors like you and me to do is to make sure that the goalpost doesn't keep moving. In other words, we have a certain goal at the outset of the kind of wealth we want to have, and we change that goal as we get closer to it. If it keeps moving every time we make progress, then we're not going to have a very satisfying life. I often ask myself, am I doing that? Am I moving the goalpost every so often? And I remind myself of this lesson because it's something that I think overall is not healthy. As the book mentions well, modern capitalism is a complete pro at two things: generating wealth and generating envy. Wanting to surpass your peers can be the fuel for hard work, but life just isn't fun if you don't have a sense of what's enough. And this equation really rang true to me. Happiness equals results minus expectations. In my life, there are things that are just never worth the risk. My family and friends, my health, my reputation, my commitment to help others. Taking risks on these things, no matter what the assumed chance, is just something I'm not going to do. Are you liking this video? Click the like button and subscribe so that other people can get exposed to these ideas. Now back to the lessons. The fourth lesson is that controlling your time is the highest paying dividend there is. This is something that I agree with completely, that the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. The ability for you to do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want, for as long as you want, is priceless. Money's greatest value is the ability to give you control of your time. Morgan refers to a book called 30 Lessons for Living by gerontologist Carl Pillemer, where Carl interviewed about 1,000 elderly Americans looking for the most important lessons they've learned from their decades of life experience. He wrote that not one of them, of the thousands, said that to be happy, you should try to work as hard as you can to make money to buy the things you want. No one said it's important to be at least as wealthy as those around you. And if you have more, then that's real success. No one said that. No one said you should choose your work based on the future earning potential. What they did value were things like quality friendships, being part of something bigger than themselves, and spending quality, unstructured time with their kids. Those were the things that people really thought were important towards the end of their lives. And the fifth lesson is to know the difference between optimism and pessimism. This is a fact that I've always thought about in my mind in a way, but never actually read it on paper, and it really clicked when I saw it. Pessimism just sounds smarter than optimism. Tell someone that everything's going to be great, and they'll either shrug you off or look at you like, very skeptically. But if you tell someone they're in danger, they'll drop everything and listen to you. Say we'll have a big recession and newspapers will call you. Say we're headed for average growth and no one particularly cares. Say we're nearing the next Great Depression and you'll probably get on TV, but mention that good times are ahead, and a common reaction is that you're either a salesman or you're just kind of out of touch with reality. This is something that I've seen personally every day when I look at the headlines from major media outlets. Every day it's something's wrong, somebody important has died, this catastrophe is about to take place or has taken place. Where is the good news these days? If good news attracted the viewership as bad news did, then I think the news would be a lot more balanced. But unfortunately, it's not. That's kind of the way it is. So think about that in your own life and in your investing, and all that is just making sure that we're not discounting things that are potentially positive, whereas they might be true as well. If good news attracted the same viewership as bad news, then I think the news we'd get would be a lot more balanced. But unfortunately, it's not today. So it's up to us to make sure that we give credence and pay attention to things that are coming across as good or optimistic, because they could very well be true. So there you have it. I definitely believe that The Psychology of Money is a book that you should read to illuminate new ways to think about wealth and money. If you'd like to buy it, I included a link below in the description. So thank you and have a great day.